captivity, that punishment has now come to an end, and now we're getting ready for the apocalypse to come. It is because of what was done to God's people that the apocalypse will come. I'm going to drill into that, giving you much more detail as to what Yeshua is talking about when he says that I will avenge my people. Avenge them for what? What have been done to his people? I'm going to drill down into that a little bit more. Let's open up in a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for all that you do for us. We pray that you open up our minds and open up our ears, Lord, that we might understand the truth, that we might be able to discern deception and lies from the truth. For you have said in your word, for we will know the truth, and the truth will set us free. Bless our lesson today, Lord, that we might receive knowledge and understanding as to who we really are, that we might understand that we have been deceived for many, many, many decades, that we have been deceived for thousands of years as to who we are. Help us to look at the world, Lord, the way it really is. Help us to understand why the apocalypse is coming to this planet and why the things that are happening, the strange events, are taking place on this lesson. In Yeshua's name, amen. Let's jump in. God's people have been systematically deceived. Christianity has been whitewashed. Christianity was moved from North Africa to Europe. The Messiah's skin color was changed from very black to very white. Look at the next video.
Jesus was not born in a manger in central Pennsylvania. He was a man of color, and the fact that we have represented him for centuries, literally as a white man, speaks to the entire history of white supremacy. The image of a white Jesus has been used to justify enslavement, conquest, colonialism, the genocide of indigenous peoples. There are literally millions of human beings whose lives have been snuffed out by people who conquered under the banner of a white god.
In 313 AD, Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire.
Ironically, according to Daniel 2 verse 40 and Daniel 7 verse 23, Rome represents the fourth beast that devours the whole earth and breaks it into pieces.
God's people have been systematically deceived. Christianity has been hijacked. Look at the imagery on the screen. Look at the Renaissance. It is mentioned in the book of Maccabees that the heathen sought to change the images of God's holy people. They changed it from what is on your right to what is on your left. And they created a whole system of what they call Christianity today, visual lies. And we have become accustomed to looking at what is not true.
You need to know who the true Hebrew Israelites are. You need to go and study. I don't need to make this go 40 more minutes trying to teach you who the true Hebrew Israelites are. There's enough messages, teachings out there on it. And if you go read your Bible, you'll clearly know who they are. You can't hide a white Jesus in Egypt and expect him to blend right in. It ain't going to happen. You ain't going to mistake Paul for an Egyptian if Paul's a white person. You ain't going to have Moses be able to walk right, or be carried right into the house of Pharaoh and pass as one of his sons if he's a white baby. It ain't going to happen. So let's just get to the bottom line here, okay? They're brown-skinned people. Simple. But then you got the Christians out here that they've went and the Catholics have changed that. They whitewashed the whole thing. And then you got people who are supposed to be getting back to the book, back to the truth. They're still trying to whitewash it.
Knowledge also has been hijacked. When our children learn in school, we learn that God's people, God's Israelites, his holy people, have contributed nothing to academia. That is also a lie. That is also deception. Knowledge came from Black Egypt. It did not come from Europe. Even the origin of knowledge has been hijacked as well as Christianity. Look at the next video.
So let me get this straight. The ancient Kemites or Egyptians knew all the planets in the solar system and stars from light years away. They even knew that the Earth was tilted in gravity. So how did Isaac Newton discover gravity? When the black Kemites knew it thousands of years before him, how did Benjamin Franklin discover electricity? When the Kemites were using light bulbs, batteries, and other strange things thousands of years ago, Nikola Tesla went to Africa multiple times to study the pyramids, and he created the Tesla coil right after. He knew the black Kemites were geniuses, and they knew about electromagnetic energy. The black Kemites of Africa invented geometry, algebra, physics, calculus, chemistry, and electricity. They say Happy Black History Month, but they really don't want to talk about real black history before slavery.
Look at the picture on the screen. It is a picture of Babylon the Great, because its origin, the origin of Catholicism, which is the basis of modern Christianity, came from Babylon. You see things like the Easter Bunny, the god of fertility. You see Santa Claus, Old Saint Nick. You see Semiramis and Tammuz. The Pope even wears the symbol of Dagon on his head. Dagon is represented by a symbol of a fish. This is what the Pope wears on his head. This is the foundation of the whitewash European system of false Christianity that all of us has been taught. It is the only way to heaven according to them. But it has an elaborate system in place that covers up the real truth of history. Look at the pictures on your right. It shows Christianity in action, where the slaves are being beat and whipped and dehumanized in the name of Christianity. They have been taught that God's people are inferior to all other peoples according to their modern form of false whitewash Christianity. But look at the names of this ziggurat, and you will begin to understand what I'm talking about. Revelation chapter 17, verse 1 through verse 6 talks about the great prostitute. I read this before, but let me read it again because I think it's appropriate for this lesson. Verse 1, one of the seven angels who had poured out the seven bowls came over and spoke to me. Come with me, he said, and I will show you the judgment that is going to come on the great prostitute who rules over many waters. Many waters means many nations. The kings of the world have committed adultery with her, and the people who belong to this world have been made drunk by the wine of her immorality. Verse 3, so the angel took me in the spirit into the wilderness. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that had 7 heads and 10 horns, and blasphemous names against God were written all over it. Verse 4, the woman wore purple and scarlet, which this is the colors of the Catholic Church, the official colors. The woman wore purple and scarlet clothing and beautiful jewelry made of gold and precious gems and pearls. In her hand she held a gold goblet full of obscenities and the impurities of her immorality. This is talking about the golden goblet, the golden cup that the pontiff uses. It has all kinds of precious stones embedded into pure gold. A mysterious name was written on her forehead: Babylon the Great, mother of all prostitutes and obscenities in the world. I could see, now listen at this, I could see that she was drunk. Remember, I talked about the European takeover of Christianity and the whitewashing of it. I could see that she was drunk with the blood of God's holy people who were witnesses for Yeshua. Remember, the Pope ordered the slave trade. The Vatican financed the slave trade. They knew exactly who they were going after. They were going after not black Africans. They were going after the tribe of Judah, which they knew they have ran into Africa and settled in West Africa. That started the slave trade. They also furnished ships and crews in order to fuel the transatlantic slave trade. Therefore, they were drunk with the blood of God's holy people. John says, I stared at her in complete amazement. Everyone stares at her in complete amazement because they have so thoroughly twisted and whitewashed Christianity towards Europeanism as if they are God's holy people. They've embraced Europeans who call themselves Jews, who are not Jews at all. They have no Semitic roots whatsoever. They are currently occupying the land of Yeshua, Jerusalem, at this very moment. God says, I'm going to topple this entire system. That is what the tribulation is all about, where he's going to judge this entire fabricated system based on lies and drenched in the blood of God's holy people. Yes, we are waking up to the truth. You can no longer hide it. I know you don't want to teach critical race theory in schools because you want to hide all of this, but I'm going to bring it out. I'm going to speak the truth no matter what. Zechariah 10:6-9 talks about Israel and talks about his scattering Israel to the four corners of the earth. But he says that they will remember who they are. They will remember him in those distant lands eventually. And when he whistles, we will answer. Let me read it. Verse 6. I will strengthen Judah and save Israel. I will restore them because of my compassion. It will be as though I had never rejected them, for I am the Lord their God, who will hear their cries. Verse 7, the people of Israel will become like mighty warriors, and their hearts will be made happy as if by wine. Their children too will see it and be glad. Their hearts will rejoice in the Lord. Verse 8, when I whistle to them, they will come running, for I have redeemed them. From the few who are left, they will grow as numerous as they were before. Verse 9, though I have scattered them like seeds among the nations, they will still remember me in distant lands. See, the awakening is happening, and there are a remnant that is digging into the truth. They're beginning to understand that they've been lied to and that they've been deceived. And now we're beginning to remember who we are. We're beginning to remember who Yeshua is. And we will remember, he says, in the distant lands in which he hath scattered us. They and their children will survive and return again to Israel. But that's not until the second coming, until Yeshua comes and set up his kingdom. And when he does that, he will be a mighty fortress around us that no one will ever deceive us again. No one will ever make us afraid again. No one will ever whip us again. No one will ever lynch us again. No one will ever oppress us again, because he will be right there in our midst to make sure that no one ever thinks of harming us again. But in the meantime, he will systematically move to destroy Babylon the Great, the whole whitewashed system of false Christianity. He will destroy it all, and then he will turn to his people and redeem the remnant. In order to make sense of the apocalypse, we always must remind ourselves of God's prophetic timepiece, which is his people and their history. He promised that 400 years of oppression and slavery would take place in a foreign land That began in AD 1619 officially. It ended in AD 2019, 400 years later. Now we should start seeing apocalyptic things happening on this planet. We should start seeing the beginning of the end happening. It starts with the rapture. Let me just go down through the chronology quickly with you again. I will show you this slide from time to time to remind you. So God's prophetic time clock have started. Each week I want to have a brief moment just to catch you up on some of the signs of the times, the things that are leading up to the apocalypse. Antichrist will most likely use technology such as this in order to control whether people can buy or sell. Take a look at this next video.
Today, we are announcing 3 new policing technologies in New York City. The K5 autonomous security robot, the Spot Digidog robot, and the Star Chase GPS attachment system. Our job is to fight crime and keep people safe. And these tools are significant steps forward in that vital mission.
We are here to get stuff done. #GSD.
Watch this lady use her implant to wave it over a monitor to buy something. She has a implant the size of a piece of rice that allows her to buy and sell using that identification chip that is implanted in her. This technology is already here that eventually will lead to the mark of the beast eventually during the apocalypse. Check this next video out.
I'm at Whole Foods and I'm about to pay for my groceries with my... That's the coolest thing ever.
Here is another thing that has never happened before in the Hawaiian Islands. Apocalyptic wildfires. This has never happened in the Hawaiian Islands ever before. I will show you films and pictures and news clips of this event. Take a look at this next video.
Oh my gosh, look at the harbor. Oh my gosh.
It's Hawaii's worst natural disaster in history, according to officials, who say Maui's wildfires unleashed destruction that will take many years and billions of dollars to rebuild. The resort town of Lahaina was once the capital of the Hawaiian kingdom, drawing 80% of the island's visitors every year. Much of it has now been reduced to smoldering ruins, according to Governor Josh Green. The fast-moving inferno killed more than 50 people, a toll expected to rise, turned thousands homeless, and destroyed as many as 1,000 buildings. This tourist from California was on vacation with his wife and 5 children as the fire approached. They were forced to jump into the sea after escaping their rental car in Lahaina.
Everything we're out there floating, and this is so surreal, and everything is burning around, explosions, cars blowing up, like embers flying. We couldn't breathe. We couldn't breathe. There's no air. It's just like carbon monoxide, and we held on as best as we could. My wife, my kids. My older ones helped with the younger ones, and we tried to stick out the ground. The waves was trying to take us out to the ocean. We had to come back.
Many more people suffered burns, smoke inhalation, and other injuries. The inferno that ravaged Lahaina was one of 3 major wildfires on Maui, all of them still burning, fueled by dry conditions, a buildup of fuel, and 60 miles per hour gusts of wind. The fate of some of Lahaina's cultural treasures remains unclear. The historic 60-foot-tall banyan tree marking the spot where a 19th century palace stood is still standing, though some of its boughs appeared charred.
Here is another thing that has never happened before in the Hawaiian Islands. Apocalyptic wildfires. This has never happened in the Hawaiian Islands ever before. I will show you films and pictures and news clips of this event. Take a look at this next video.
Banned flames and smoke that's horrifically fast. arriving without warning, giving people little or no time to evacuate. Those are the consistent, terrifying accounts of victims and witnesses on Maui.
We saw the smoke start about a block away from our house, and this was maybe 3:30, 4 o'clock. By 5:30, our house was gone. Everything that we had ever known was gone.
Claire Kent says she also got out of her house just in time.
It's like as soon as we were out the door, it was like, holy cow. Within an hour, the flames had moved all the way down to the end of like the neighborhood.
Kent and other residents of the town of Lahaina and the area surrounding it giving harrowing accounts of what they saw and providing images to match them.
Oh my gosh, look at the harbor.
This video of a building violently burning was taken by Alan Dicker, who says at least one of his houses caught on fire. He says this is a historic area of Front Street, where he has a gallery.
I started taking a video of it because I was amazed that there were no fire trucks there. And then as I turned and looked down Front Street exploded in flame.
Motorist Marjorie St. Clair narrated as she drove through the flames in Lahaina.
It's like Lahaina is on fire. Oh my God!
Jeff Melichar said he was told his house was gone after he evacuated. He took this video of what he said was a Salvation Army facility in flames. Claire Kent, who works on a boat, sent us these pictures of fire in the distance and what appear to be smoke and flames on the water. She said the Coast Guard and private boaters had to scramble to rescue people from the ocean.
They were sending boats from Mount Laia to help pluck people out of the water because they had just run down and started swimming to get away from the fire.
Kent says it's not just the victims who are in shock. Rescuers also traumatized.
My friend got out of his car and he was covered in head to toe in ash. His eyes were black, his mouth was black, and he had gone back and was helping getting people out. He had a car full of old people, and he was just like, the look on his face, I mean, it was terror.
Claire Kent and other survivors say those apocalyptic scenes were made even worse by the lack of communication. They said because power was knocked out and cell service was terrible, they couldn't see news reports or get any communication ahead of time that the fires were spreading. She says at one point, quote, there were guys on bicycles just screaming at people to leave.
Take a look at these before and after aerial photos. Photos taken before and after the apocalyptic wildfires ravaged Hawaii, the second largest island in the chain. Take a look at this next video. Take a look at these before and after aerial photos. Photos taken before and after the apocalyptic wildfires ravaged Hawaii, the second largest island in the chain. Take a look at this next video. Take a look at these before and after aerial photos. Photos taken before and after the apocalyptic wildfires ravaged Hawaii, the second largest island in the chain. Take a look at this next video. Take a look at these before and after aerial photos. Photos taken before and after the apocalyptic wildfires ravaged Hawaii, the second largest island in the chain. Take a look at this next video. Take a look at this last sign that I want to show you today. God says as we approach the apocalypse, he will cause strange things to happen. He says he will cause the deserts to produce springs of water that will begin to water the dry places of this earth. Look at this next video. A river of water just sprung up from nowhere out of the desert as a sign that the apocalypse is near. Take a look at this next video.
A river just appeared in the desert out of nowhere, fulfilling a 2,500-year-old Bible prophecy. Watch this, it's going to blow your mind. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 41, verse 18, the Bible says this: I will open up rivers on the bare heights and fountains in the midst of the valleys. I will make the wilderness a pool of water and the dry land springs of water. Just recently in the Middle East, a river exploded out of nowhere, creating this new body of water. This is just one of many Bible prophecies being fulfilled right now. And guess what? If you believe that the Bible is true, I want you to subscribe now to follow along as we see the Bible come to life.
Until you're here, I communicate with all I am for you. You hold my words in the palm of your hand, and I am yours forever. Jesus, I believe in you. Jesus, I belong to you. The reason that I live, the reason that I stand with all I
God never judges his people, his righteous people, his called out ones, along with the world when he judges. Before the terror starts, Yeshua will remove the true converts, the people of God, off of this planet. Both Israelites and non-Israelites, all of those called before the foundation of the world, just as he did in the days of Noah, and just as he did in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah, when the judgment of God fell upon the earth during the time of Noah, and fell upon the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah and the plains because of homosexuality in Sodom and Gomorrah. He will do the same. He says it will be just the same just before the apocalypse happen with all of its terror. He will tear down this entire Anglo system, the monetary system, the religious system, the social system, the educational system. He will tear it all down. Isaiah 13 verse 6 says, "Scream in terror, for the day of the Lord have arrived, the time for the Almighty to destroy." Verse 7, "Every arm is paralyzed with fear, every heart melts." That's everybody, folks. Verse 8, "And people are terrified. Pains of anguish grip them like those of a woman in labor. They look helplessly at one another, their faces aflame with fear." Verse 9, "For see, the day of the Lord is coming, the terrible day of his fury and fierce anger. The land will be made desolate, and all the sinners destroyed with it." Verse 10, "The heavens will be black above them. The stars will give no light. The sun will be dark when it rises. The moon will provide no light. Verse 11, I, the Lord, will punish the world for its evil and the wicked for their sins. I will crush the arrogance of the proud and humble the pride of the mighty. Verse 12, I will make people scarcer than gold, more rare than the fine gold of an offerer. Verse 13, for I will shake the heavens. The earth will be moved from its place when the Lord of heaven's armies displays his wrath in the day of his fierce anger. Verse 14, everyone in Babylon will run about like hunted gazelles, like sheep without a shepherd. They will try to find their own people and flee to their own lands. Yes, God is going to destroy the entire world system because of what it has done to its people, because of how they have treated his people like rabid animals. They have treated his people. And Yeshua said they will answer for everything they have done. They will answer not to us, but they will answer to Yeshua in the day of judgment, and they will scream in terror. After the rapture, the Antichrist is revealed. He will come up with a series of lies, maybe saying he's from another planet, and he's come down as the successor of Jesus Christ and the successor of Muhammad and all the other Buddha and all the others that have come before him. I believe that the book of Daniel gives enough evidence that he may be a masculine homosexual. This is why homosexuality is being proliferated around the world, so that it's accepted, so that a world leader who is a masculine homosexual would be accepted. But he will come out explaining the rapture and promising the world peace, and the world will believe him, and he will set up a one world government. He will have total control. He may come up with some type of lie that UFOs have come and snatched a bunch of people off of the planet, snatch all of the young children off of the planet. Remember, all the young children will be taken off the planet, and they will believe this lie with all of their hearts. Look at the next couple videos. This may be the kind of explanation that he may give, but he will win the world over with promises of peace. Look at this picture on the screen and study 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3 through verse 12. I went over this before, so I'm not going to go over it again, but this, I believe the media has been getting the world ready for this for a very long time, for decades. They are saying we're not alone in the universe. The universe is so large. It's not just here to show the glory of God, as the Bible says. It's here to house E.T., and they may be hostile to us. Notice you almost never see friendly people from outer space. We're being mind manipulated, getting us ready, getting the world ready to believe the lie of the Antichrist. I believe this video will be plastered all over the 6 o'clock news that UFOs have come and raptured all the children off of the planet, and a few troublemakers, they got them off the planet as well. Antichrist will come up with a protection plan for the people of earth, and they will be deceived with all of their hearts, culminating in the mark of the beast, in order to buy or sell anything. The Antichrist will soon show his true colors, and he will start a nuclear biological war, ending the time of peace, most likely in the name of protecting the earth from another invasion from extraterrestrials, most likely. I'm not sure that's going to be the lie, but it certainly seems plausible based on what we see and being seen on television for a very long time. Look at the pictures on the screen. I'm not sure it will be this way. I'm sure it will be much worse than this. These will be global catastrophes. catastrophes, global wars that will be devastating. It will devastate the economy. It will devastate the food supply, and on and on and on. It will set the stage for the great tribulation and the time of trouble. Peace will be removed from the earth. A biological war will actually take place. A nuclear war will take place. The atmosphere will be polluted. The waters will be polluted. The world will lose millions. A quarter of the population of planet Earth will be killed during this global catastrophe. The first half of the tribulation will be self-induced, induced by man himself. The second half of the tribulation, which is 3.5 years, will be God meting out his punishment upon the planet. Next comes starvation. Millions will starve to death because the food supply would have been interrupted. The waters would have been poisoned and people would die of hunger. In fact, Revelation says that a man will work or a woman will work an entire day and make just enough money to buy enough food to feed one person, not to mention the other members of the family. Millions around the world will literally starve to death as a result. There'll be more people dead, so many people that they won't even be able to bury them. They will actually stop burying people and just leave them lay where they lie. Next, a fourth of all the people living on the earth will be killed with weapons of war, and the famine that follow, the diseases that follow death and war. The animals will go mad and begin to attack human beings. Maybe this is because biological agents in the air, or maybe radiation, who knows, but the animal kingdom will turn against human beings. Insects, large animals, small animals will attack human beings, and there will be an increase also in famines and pestilence. Many plagues and diseases will kill a fourth of all the people living on the earth at that time. I am not sure if this is the way it is going to look, but I am certain that it will be much worse when the animal kingdom turns against mankind. I cannot imagine being attacked by a swarm of roaches. I hate roaches. Or fire ants, or a bear, or a pack of dogs, or whatever, a pack of ducks attacking human beings. It's going to be terrible in that day. Nothing on earth is going to be stable. People will be terrified. Look at this next video. Plagues are already starting to happen. Understanding what's going to happen in the tribulation helps us to understand the precursors to a lot of things, horrors that are going to happen within the time of Jacob's trouble, the 7-year tribulation. Look at the next video.
All this within a couple of days.
And plants.
The little bit of vegetation we can have out here in Elko, they're going to eat it all.
Oxygen, which can lead to algae growth, seems to be causing the deaths. Photos from Quintana Beach County Park show just how many fish have been swept ashore out there.
America, wake up, my sleeping beauty. So beautiful as you lie there as a princess who rests in peace, knowing that her God will keep her.
You are loved. You are heard. You are understood. And you belong.
All this
as a result of diseases from nuclear fallout and biological weaponry, starvation, animal attacks, poison water, poison atmosphere, exposure to space radiation because the ozone layer has been impacted by nuclear war and the sun has been acting abnormally. People are getting sick and overwhelming the medical system. It will be a horrible time where where no one will be safe or feel safe. They will all depend upon the Antichrist and his provisions made for them. Next, the Antichrist orders that everybody on earth be identified. Have you noticed the beginning of this in this day and age? I don't care what you do. The authorities are trying to get more information than they're entitled to about you, your family, and all. Every time you call somewhere, they already know a whole lot of information about you. Antichrist will be able to use this data in order to identify who's who. He will cause everybody to take a mark on their hand or on their forehead. Without it, they cannot buy and sell. And eventually they will become enemies of the world state, of the world empire. They will become enemies. Maybe he will say they're working with extraterrestrials to topple the world system that's feeding the few people that are left. But anyone that refuses to take the mark of the Antichrist, he's slaughtered. He slaughtered all of them. It will be an actual bloodbath. Revelation 6, verse 12 through 17. Verse 12, I watched as the Lamb broke the sixth seal, and there was a great earthquake. The sun became as dark as black cloth, and the moon became as red as blood. Verse 13, then the stars of the sky fell to the earth like green figs falling from a tree shaken by a strong wind. Verse 14, the sky was rolled up like a scroll, and all of the mountains and islands were moved from their places. Verse 15, then everyone, the kings of the earth, the rulers, the generals, the wealthy, the powerful, and every slave and free person, all hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains, and they cried to the mountains and to the rocks, fall on us, hide us from the face of the one who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. Verse 17, for the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to survive it? Yes, the very stability of the heavens will be shaken, the ground beneath will be shaken, and mankind will not know what to do. They will be absolutely terrified and perplexed because they thought God did not exist. The world will be devastated by this worldwide earthquake, the first of its kind, an apocalyptic earthquake that will bury cities. Look at the picture on the screen. I believe it will be even worse than this because this will be a worldwide quake. People will be perplexed. They will be terrified. Everything they knew, everything they held dear, now is crumbling before their eyes. The entire infrastructure of the world will be impacted by all of these judgments that God has poured out upon this planet. The mountains will flatten out. This earthquake will be so tremendous. The very stability of planet Earth has been shaken. Nothing is solid any longer. The earth is being destroyed with mankind on it. It is the day of God's wrath and the day of his anger. No one will feel safe. What is important to you now when you see all of these things beginning to crumble? All the things that you held dear, that you work for, that you lust after. What will you do? What will you be thinking when you discover that God is real, that salvation is real? And then you might deduce in your mind that hell is also real. You might deduce in your mind that the grave is only the beginning and not the end. Even the stability of the heavens will be shaken. Nothing above is certain any longer. There's trouble on every hand, worldwide troubles. People will scramble for their lives. They will try to run into unincorporated areas of the land, looking for food, looking for shelter, looking for safety, but there won't be any place they can find that is stable on planet Earth. There will be no peace or safety anywhere for anyone.
This broadcast, seek shelter immediately.
What is it? What's going on?
If you are hearing this broadcast, seek shelter immediately. Seek shelter immediately.
Hang on, Nathan.
Seek shelter immediately. Seek shelter immediately.
People will hide themselves in the caves and in the rocks and beg the caves and the rocks to fall on them, kill them and hide them from the one sitting on the throne. There is coming a time during the Great Tribulation where men will long to die, but death will not come. God will suspend dying and death. Imagine a man jumping off of a building and he hits the ground, but he can't die. Yes, he will hurt and suffer, but he can't die. It is going to be a horrendous time for mankind, a time such as has never been on the earth before and never shall be again. It is the time of God's anger and retribution for planet earth. We might ask ourselves, why is God doing this to planet Earth? Look at the picture on the screen. It explains why. Because of what has been done to his people. This system of Babylon the Great has been built to oppress and to slaughter God's own holy people. God promised certain things to people, structures that do that to his people. So we might ask, why is God destroying the world the way he is? Well, let's see if we can begin to understand. Deuteronomy 28:45 through 51 says, if you refuse, God is talking to his people, if you refuse to listen to the Lord your God and obey the commands and decrees he has given you, all these curses will pursue you and overtake you until you are destroyed. Verse 46. These horrors will serve as a sign and warning among you and your descendants forever. Verse 47. If you do not serve the Lord your God with joy and enthusiasm for the abundant benefits you have received. Verse 48. You will serve your enemies whom the Lord will send against you. You will be left hungry, thirsty, naked, and lacking in everything. The Lord will put an iron yoke on your neck, oppressing you harshly until he has destroyed you. There is no other peoples on earth that share this history. Verse 49. The Lord will bring a distant nation, and listen at this, the Lord will bring a distant nation against you from the ends of the earth, and it will swoop down on you like a vulture. It is a nation whose language you do not understand, a fierce and heartless nation that shows no respect for the old or no pity for the young. Jeremiah 30, verse 16 and 17. But all who devour you, listen at this, all who devour you will be devoured. This is why he's brought the tribulation, to devour those that devoured his people. The tribulation is all about retribution for what the world and the nations have done to God's holy people. And all your enemies will be sent into exile. All who plunder you, listen at this, all who plunder you will be plundered, and all who attack you will be attacked by the Lord, not us. Verse 17, I will give you back your health and heal your wounds, says the Lord, for you are called an outcast, Jerusalem, for whom no one cares. But God cares, and this is the reason God is going to bring this world to its knees. He is going to bring destruction, global destruction, to the nations for what they have done to his people. We are the most hated people on earth for no reason at all. Is black really that bad and that hateful that you should hate us and treat us like dogs and animals? You will have to answer to Yeshua for what you have done. God told Abraham, I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make you famous, and you will be a blessing to others. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who treat you with contempt. All the families on the earth will be blessed through you. God have blessed the world through his people. This is one reason that we're hated by everyone. Look at the picture on the screen. Now listen at Deuteronomy 28, verse 9 through 11. The Lord will establish you as his holy people, as he promised you an oath. If you keep the commands of the Lord your God and walk in his ways, verse 10, then all the peoples on the earth will see that you are called by the name of the Lord, and they will fear you. This is one reason why the world hates us. They are afraid of us. That's why they try to hide our history. That's why they try to bury who we were. That's why they had to dismantle what God has made us, bringing us down to what we are today. But Yeshua says he will build us back up again. But in the meantime, the world will hate us because they fear us.
Behold, the day shall occur that I shall gather Yeshua from the four corners of the earth, and I shall take you back to your homeland in Africa. And all of the outside nations I will completely destroy, but I shall not destroy you, but I shall discipline you. I cannot let you go unpunished. I shall purge the rebels from amongst my own people as well. You shall be taken back to the wilderness, and there I will go into judgment with the entirety of all creation. And for those that are proven worthy through the fire, they shall be taken into the fullness of my pleasure and into my Shabbat, my day of rest. The outside world will be undergoing a world war, but it will not be against each other, for they shall all fight against me and my people, my weapons of war that I have prepared for this exact moment. The great solar flash, which is my return, where my light will be sparking from the east to the west. You shall transform your DEA, and you shall be activated, for I have said that ye are gods. And you shall execute judgment, my judgment, upon the heathen, and they shall be completely destroyed. For those who do not surrender and submit and are placed in servitude, they shall be thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, along with all rebels and those who transgress against me. For they have all plotted against the Most High. And to the extent that you have done to my people, it shall be done to you. For I am a righteous judge. All shall be judged accordingly. So
God says, I will send a fierce nation, a heartless nation, a nation that will show no respect for the old and no pity for the young. He will send a nation against his people who has no conscience if his people continue to disobey him. Well, we know history, and his people did disobey him continually. And so he allowed this heartless, fierce, heartless nation come down upon his people. And in the land of our captivity, we are constantly being persecuted, disrespected, brutalized, and treated as if we are animals. Not only that, but we are oppressed all the time. God says that this would happen. All of the horrors that I showed you earlier is God paying the nations back for what they have done to his people. So let us take a look at 10 things, cruel things that they have done to his people while God's anger has been aroused to such a point as to destroy the whole planet.
For those ensnared in the shackles of slavery, life was a perpetual struggle for survival. Day after day, they toiled under the scorching sun, their weary bodies pushed to the limits by back-breaking labor. The conditions they endured were not only physically demanding, but also rife with disease and unsanitary surroundings. These enslaved individuals, already stripped of their dignity and freedom, were further assaulted by the cruel hands of fate. Yet the torment inflicted upon slaves did not end with the arduous labor and squalor they endured. Instead, it reached new depths of cruelty through the implementation of punishments designed to break their spirits and enforce a system of dominance. From public whippings that left bloody scars on their bodies to branding and mutilation, the physical pain was a constant companion in their lives. Brace yourself, for what you are about to discover will unveil the depths of human cruelty and remind us of the importance of justice, equality, and the enduring resilience of the human spirit.
Number 10, God says, I will pay you back for everything you have done to my people. I will sell your sons and daughters to the people of Judah, and they will sell them to the people of Arabia, a nation far away. I, the Lord, have spoken. Joel 3, 7, and 8. Look at this next video, and you will see some of the brutality that we had to endure.
Number 10. Whipping, one of the most common and brutal punishments meted out to enslaved people, was whipping. Whipping was a cruel and calculated method used to show power and keep enslaved people in line. Slave owners and overseers used whipping to make them afraid, prevent rebellions, and reinforce the idea that white people were superior. The whip cut through their skin, causing physical agony and deep emotional trauma, always reminding them of their subservient position. The history of whipping as punishment for slaves is rife with countless examples of its brutality. One chilling example is the story of Harriet Jacobs, an escaped slave and author of the book Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. In her book, Jacobs describes the anguish of witnessing the slave owner brutally whip one of his plantation slaves. She recalls seeing the blood and gore on the walls the next morning. Another haunting example is the story of a slave named Gordon, also known as Whipped Peter. His back bore the horrifying testimony of countless lashings, with a lattice of scars crisscrossing his skin. These scars were a constant reminder of the unspeakable suffering endured by enslaved people. However, the horrors did not end with the initial beatings. Some heartless slave owners went to even greater lengths to inflict pain and prolong the agony. When the wounds of their slaves started to heal, these owners would order that the wounds be opened up again. To intensify the suffering, they would apply substances like red pepper and turpentine to the reopened gashes. The burning pain caused by these agonizing applications is unimaginable. There's a story of one owner who ground a brick into dust and mixed it with lard. He would then rub this mixture into the deep wounds of a helpless slave. Though it pales in comparison to the other punishments coming up, whipping was a brutal reality for enslaved people, symbolizing their dehumanization and oppression.
Number 9. Yeshua says, I will take revenge. I will pay them back. In due time, their feet will slip. Their day of disaster will arrive, and their destiny will overtake them. Verse 36, indeed, the Lord will give justice to his people, and he will change his mind about his servants when he sees their strength is gone and no one is left, slave or free. Deuteronomy 32, 35 through 36. Look at the next video and we'll see what God is talking about when he says it's a heartless and fierce nation who has no respect for God's people.
Number 9. Mutilation slaves were subjected to grueling physical labor, particularly on cotton plantations or in the fields. Those who worked in their masters' homes were expected to maintain a certain appearance, often favoring those with lighter skin or better communication skills. Despite the expectation that slaves' bodies should be protected and cared for, this was rarely the case. Unfortunately, when slaves engaged in acts of resistance or fought against each other, owners would frequently order mutilation as a form of punishment. These brutal acts ranged from cutting off ears or slashing at flesh to more extreme measures, such as amputating limbs, gouging out eyes, severing hamstrings, and even castrating both males and females. Tragically, the victims of these gruesome acts rarely received any medical attention or treatment for their injuries. As a result, many would succumb to infections, severe blood loss, and other life-threatening complications. The lack of medical care further emphasized the disregard for the humanity and well-being of enslaved individuals.
Number 8, in a little while my anger against you will end, and then my anger will rise up to destroy them. That's our enemies. The Lord of heaven's armies will lash them with his whip, as he did when Gideon triumphed over the Midianites at the rock of Obiah, or when the Lord's staff was raised to drown the Egyptians, to drown the Egyptian army in the sea. In that day the Lord will end the bondage of his people. He will break the yoke of slavery and lift it from their shoulders. Notice he's not talking about the yoke in Egypt, because Egypt have already happened. He's talking about something that would take place in the future. This is Isaiah 10 verse 25 through 27.
Number 8. Brandings. This brutal practice involved burning the flesh with a heated metal tool. The purpose of branding was to mark slaves as someone's property, making it easier to identify them and prevent theft or unauthorized selling of slaves. Large companies often branded their slaves to assert ownership and discourage others from claiming them. In Louisiana, there was a law called the Code Noir that allowed the branding of slaves as a punishment for running away. By the year 1840, New Orleans had become the largest slave market in the country, subjecting countless individuals to this cruel decree. Particularly in the southern states, branding became a common form of punishment for slaves who attempted to escape. The branding mark, often a letter or some other distinguishable symbol, was seared onto the slave's face, making it difficult for them to be assigned to work in the master's house or serve in more privileged roles. The act of branding left a permanent scar on the enslaved individuals, both physically and emotionally. It served as a painful reminder of their status as property and the harsh consequences they would face for seeking freedom. Moreover, branding became a form of evidence to counter claims by larger companies that denied their involvement in such inhumane practices.
Number 7, I will make you into a great nation. He's talking to Abraham. I will bless you and make you famous. And he's talking about his ancestors as well. And you will be a blessing to others. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who treat you with contempt. All the families on the earth will be blessed through you.
Number 7, smoked alive. Over time, some states with slaves introduced laws to supposedly protect the well-being and rights of enslaved individuals. However, these laws were rarely enforced, leaving slaves vulnerable to all sorts of abuse. In different states, different cruel practices gained popularity. One chilling account comes from William W. Brown, an escaped slave who shared his experience. He revealed a horrifying practice that was common in Virginia. Imagine a situation where a slave owner would bind the slaves and take them to a smokehouse. Inside, the slaves would be whipped, adding to their suffering. But the cruelty didn't stop there. The owner would then set a fire using tobacco stems, causing thick smoke to fill the room. The slaves would be forced to inhale this suffocating smoke as an additional form of punishment. You can only imagine the fear and pain these enslaved individuals endured. They were already bound and whipped, and now they had to struggle for every breath amidst the choking smoke. It's hard to fathom the depths of cruelty and disregard for human life that existed during that time. What makes this even more shocking is that these punishments took place despite the existence of laws meant to protect slaves. Sadly, the lack of enforcement allowed owners to carry out such atrocious acts without facing consequences. Stories like William W. Brown's remind us of the immense suffering endured by slaves and expose the harsh realities of their existence.
Number 6, again, we illustrate the fierceness of our enemies and the heartlessness and the disrespect of our enemies. Look at this next video.
Number 6. The Hogshead former slaves have shared horrifying stories of abuse and torture that they experienced. One such brave individual was Moses Roper, who escaped from slavery and wrote a book about his life. In his book, he revealed the harsh realities that enslaved people in America had to endure. Moses described how some slave owners found pleasure in inflicting corporal punishment. He shared a particularly chilling tale of a slaveholder who had a large barrel called a hogshead. This barrel was filled with nails, with the sharp ends pointing inward. The owner would force the slaves into these barrels and then roll them down steep hills while he and other slaves watched. Stuffed into those barrels with nails digging into their bodies, they were subjected to a dangerous and degrading spectacle while being watched by their owner and others. Moses Roper's account provides a harrowing glimpse into the depths of cruelty inflicted upon enslaved individuals.
Number 5, another demonstration of what God is talking about, that he would send a fierce, heartless nation to punish his people. Look at the next video.
Number 5, suspended beneath a cooking fire. Harriet Jacobs also escaped slavery and wrote about her exploits. She described falling into the possession of a slave owner who harassed her on a regular basis despite the protests of his wife. To avoid him, Harriet hid in the crawl space in her grandmother's ceiling for 7 years before fleeing to England. But that wasn't the only terrifying experience Harriet faced. Near her hiding spot lived a cruel slaveholder who had hundreds of slaves. The master had a favorite punishment that was both painful and horrifying. He would tie up a slave, suspend them above the ground, and then light a fire beneath them. As the fire crackled and popped, a piece of fatty pork would sizzle above the flames. The burning fat would then drip onto the poor slave's bare skin, causing unbearable pain. Every drop of scorching fat that fell from above inflicted searing pain and left permanent marks on their bodies. The intense heat made it even worse, adding to their suffering and making it a truly horrific experience. The cycle of abuse and degradation not only inflicted physical pain and suffering, but also shattered any hope of a better life for the slaves.
Number 4, again, an illustration of the heartlessness and the callousness of our enemies. Look at the next video.
But also shattered any hope of a better life for the slaves. Number 4. Demotion, or sale punishments in slavery, weren't just about whippings and beatings. There were other ways slave owners exerted their power and control. George Washington, America's first president, was not only a fan of physical punishments for slaves, but also supported demoting them or selling them if they didn't meet expectations. Now, you might think that demotion doesn't sound as terrible as some of the other horrors we've talked about, but for a slave, it could be a matter of life and death. Slaves who didn't work hard enough or didn't meet their owner's demands could be demoted. This meant they would be taken from their current, perhaps less physically demanding jobs like working in the house or having a skilled trade, and forced to work in the fields. The fields were harsher, the work was more physically demanding, and the treatment from owners and overseers became even more brutal. Imagine being taken away from a job where you had some relative comfort or skill, only to be thrown into grueling labor in the fields. The conditions were tough, the work was backbreaking, and the treatment was even more violent. Slaves in this situation often faced severe punishments, enduring beatings, and suffering from the cruel hands of those in power. But it could get even worse. In the most dreadful cases, slaves who repeatedly tried to escape were sold off at cheap prices. They were sold to owners who were infamous for their mistreatment of slaves or even their tendency to work them to death. They were torn away from everything they knew, forced into the hands of ruthless owners who showed no regard for their well-being. Number 3.
Number 3, another illustration of the oppression and murderous spirit of people that seemingly has no conscience. The things they have done to his people. No wonder God is so angry.
Number 3, public burnings. Punishments in slavery were not only about hurting individuals in private. They were often meant to send a message to other slaves and even entertain onlookers. Public burnings were one of the most horrifying forms of punishment that enslaved people had to endure. In such a scene, a slave, accused of some wrongdoing, is tied either to a stake or suspended above a raging fire. The purpose was twofold. First, it was a warning to other slaves. They were forced to watch, their eyes wide with fear, as the flames licked at their fellow enslaved person's body. It was a chilling reminder that disobedience or defiance would be met with the same terrifying fate. But it wasn't just other slaves who were made to witness these public burnings. Owners from neighboring plantations and even people from nearby towns would come to watch. They saw it as a form of entertainment, as if the suffering and pain of human beings were some kind of spectacle. The cruelty and horror of public burnings extended beyond the initial moments. Some slaves, overwhelmed by the smoke and heat, would faint or pass out even before the fire consumed their bodies. They were lucky in a way, spared from enduring the worst of the torment, but for many others, there was no escape. They were left to suffer as the flames engulfed them, their cries echoing through the air, until they were silenced forever. It is deeply unsettling to think that even after slavery was abolished, public acts of violence against black individuals persisted. Lynching and hangings continued well into the 20th century, a stark reminder of the enduring legacy of racial injustice.
Number 2, take a look at this next video.
Number 2, long-term chaining chains were a cruel and painful reality in the history of slavery. They were used to control and imprison enslaved people, causing immense suffering. The use of chains began on slave ships, where Africans were chained together in cramped and suffocating conditions. Runaway slaves often faced long-term chaining as punishment. They were shackled to their workstations or to other enslaved individuals, depriving them of freedom and forcing them into labor. In some instances, lines of slaves were shackled together, forming a sorrowful procession as they carried out menial tasks in unison. This practice, unfortunately, laid the foundation for the infamous chain gangs that would later become synonymous with the oppressive conditions in U.S. prisons. One particularly infamous figure known for her brutal treatment of slaves was Madame Delphine Lalaurie. In the 19th century, investigations were carried out to uncover the truth about how she treated her slaves. However, it was a fire in her home in 1834 that revealed the shocking extent of her cruelty. It is said that during the fire, an elderly female slave who worked as a cook started the blaze, possibly as a desperate act of escape. Heartbreakingly, she was chained to the stove, becoming trapped in the flames that consumed her. As the fire raged, more horrifying discoveries were made in the Lalaurie mansion. In the attic, several enslaved individuals were found in deplorable conditions. They were suspended by their necks, their limbs painfully restrained by chains that stretched and tore their flesh. The attic became a haunting place, filled with the silent suffering of those who were trapped and abused within its walls. The story of Madame Delphine Lalaurie serves as a chilling reminder of the cruelty inflicted during slavery.
And last of all, number 1, an illustration of the cruelty that God's people had to endure in the land of our enemies.
Number 1. Forced reproduction slaves were often subjected to terrible harassment and assaults, including defilement. Shockingly, there were no laws to protect them from this abuse. When women became pregnant as a result of these terrible acts, they rarely received any medical care or special treatment. In fact, they were often treated even worse by their owners' wives. Men who were enslaved also suffered. They were forced to sleep with different women, as their owners used them for their own purposes. It was a form of exploitation that added to the pain and misery they experienced. In 1808, a law was passed in the United States to stop the importation of slaves. This caused a shortage of slaves in the South. As a result, the demand for black people increased, especially those who could have children. Slaves were bought and sold based on their ability to reproduce. They were forced to have sleep with other slaves to create more children for their owners. Normally, slaves could choose who they wanted to have children with, but there are records that show slaves being matched based on their physical features, as if they were objects to be bred rather than human beings. As we reflect on the unspeakable pain and suffering endured by slaves, one thing becomes clear. These enslaved individuals were among the strongest and most resilient people to have ever lived. Despite facing unimaginable challenges, they found the inner strength to carry on. Let us honor the memory of those who suffered by embracing our shared humanity and working towards a future where no one experiences the darkness that once consumed lives of the enslaved.
I'm going to have to leave it there for now, and we will pick it up here next week, where we will continue to talk about the apocalypse and the things leading up to the apocalypse. I'm out of time for now, but until next week, may God richly bless each and every one of you.